At this time, we will begin the Adrian City Commission work study session for May 20th, 2024. Roll call, please.
Mayor Heath,
Present.
Commissioner Banky,
Present.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Present.
Commissioner Roberts, present. Commissioner Miller, Commissioner Castleberry, present. Commissioner Gauss,
Present.
all commission members present.
At this time, I will turn it over to our city administrator, Greg Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. So we again have on our work session meeting tonight, the proposed point of sale ordinance. What's changed from last time is that we had the city attorney review it. He just made some, I mean, he can characterize for himself the changes that he made, but I think they're mostly as to form, not as to substance. And so we're ready to begin our discussion of that. We do have it on the agenda for introduction tonight as well. I checked with our assessor for your information before the meeting, so she could update the numbers related to the number of residential sales that we have in a year. It's about 300. So that relates to if we were doing the inspections, about 6 per week. But you'll recall that in the ordinance, there's an option for private inspectors to perform some of those. So unclear the city staff would have to perform all 6 of those inspections that would happen on a weekly basis if we were to go ahead and adopt the ordinance. So with that, I'll open it up for your discussion. This is more for your continued deliberations regarding the ordinance than anything new that I have to add tonight.
Greg, could you take us through the timeline about implementation, or if it passed, what would the process for implementation be, like the timeline when it would take effect?
Can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. The process for implementation, how long it would take to be in effect, and those types of things, if it were to pass.
Yeah, so when we talked about this last year, the commission asked that we put a 6-month effective date on it. So that is still what the ordinance says. So it would not go into effect for 180 days after adoption, during which time we would roll out the implementation procedures.
Question, I guess we'll look at page 2 on under premises. It says residential or rental units. So should that be rental? Does this include rentals or not under premises?
It would not include a rental that is, I mean, this is a defined term, and so that we do use the term, so there's a reason we have it there. It would not include rentals if they are in fact in compliance with the rental inspection program that we currently have. So if they have a current certificate of compliance for a rental inspection unit, then it would not need to be inspected pursuant to this ordinance. But to understand the term, we define it in the ordinance.
Can you share how condos would be covered?
A condo would be covered by the ordinance if it's an owned condo. Again, if it's one that somebody rents out, then it would already be covered by the rental inspection program. Mixed use occupancies are also covered by the ordinance. So if there's one residential, so for example, if you had a downtown commercial building and you had residential condos above, those would be covered by the ordinance if the building were going to be put up for sale insofar as the residential units are concerned.
How would condos work in that you are an owner and then you have a homeowners or a condos association that controls the outside of a condo?
That's not necessarily true for a condo, and condos can be single family homes as well. Most commonly in our town, they're site condominiums. We have a couple of those. I think, well, a couple of residential, what would appear to be subdivisions that are actually condominiums developed under condominium law. And so that would be really the only context given the scope of this ordinance right now, which is exterior only, that there would be any real import to this ordinance, right? So that would look like any other residential sale. And typically in a site condominium, you either have a limited common element around your home, which is what would otherwise be known as the yard, or the whole lot, it's not a lot, but a whole condominium unit that looks like a house with a yard in the normal subdivision context is actually the unit. And so you keep up the exterior of all that space. Rentals are on a 3-year cycle, and likewise, if, under this ordinance, if it's a new home or it's been, as I recall, if it's been inspected in the last 3 years, then that certificate is still good.
Is there any union issues with a private inspector compared to our on-staff inspectors?
That's not one of our categories under our in one of our bargaining units, so no.
And we're comfortable with outside inspectors performing this task?
This is the structure that we discussed, and so we've made provision for it, both because, well, I think principally because we wanted to not make it seem like you're reliant on us to do it and our schedule, and if we were closed for a holiday or whatever it was, that you would have another option for getting the inspections done. I think that what we've written is such that they need to have some appropriate qualifications for that and are held to account if it's fairly easy, for example, to tell if a private inspector went to a site and gave it a passing mark and the house needs to be painted, that's going to be very obvious, and that inspector's not going to stay on the approved list if that kind of thing is happening.
One concern that was shared by me would be the cost of inspections and the amount of time for personnel to do the inspections. So in my point of view, if this was to pass, I don't think this is a moneymaker for the city. I think we just recuperate cost and have an inspection cost that's reasonable and fair for all parties.
Yeah, by law, we can't make money on any fee, whether it's this one or any other one. And so the fee needs to be set to cover the cost of the service being provided, but it can't be any higher than the cost of the service provided.
I have a couple of handouts and some research from some other cities that I wanted to pass down. But just on page 4 under B2, there's a double the to be corrected. And then on page 5, where it talks about the disqualification of a private inspector, it says, if the city documents an incident, is there a formal process here? Because it talks about if an inspector has intentionally falsified an inspection report, repeated incidents, they may be disqualified. I guess my question here is there a due process hearing that's in place? Is this the Construction Board of Appeals that would make the decision, or who makes the decision under the city?
I assume the community development director would make that decision. I don't think it's a due process thing because it's a private matter. It's a contractual matter.
So we're contracting with them, or?
They
isn't it-
would agree to abide by, I mean, we're not paying them as such, but they're agreeing to abide by our rules in exchange for the ability to participate in our process. So it's in the nature of a contractual relationship, I would say.
And if we say one thing and they say the other, then there's no due process, or what is?
I think it's in our sole discretion.
Are you talking about
Construction
the
company.
owner of the
No, those-
residence or are you?
The actual
The
inspector.
The inspector, okay, just making sure. We're only talking about if we disagree with what the inspector.
So if we say you can no longer inspect in the city of Adrian,
Yeah, that's not, I mean, to be clear, if a regulated person, a property owner, the seller of residential property has a beef with the inspection, that can go to the Construction Board of Appeals. There is an appeal for that. If you're just talking about whether somebody's allowed to be on our list or not, that's you know, that is up to our administrative discretion. Yeah, subject to the rules that are set forth in this ordinance.
under A on page 5, is there a timeline here? It says after the inspection of this subject premises, the building official or designated enforcement officer shall issue a certificate of compliance if they meet the standards. Is this a 3-day turnaround, a 5-day, a 10-day?
I mean, it's like any other permit, we process them as fast as we can. I don't know that we prescribe the timeline for any of those, but yeah, I mean, we do it as quickly as we can.
Because I know that's definitely a concern in terms of closings and working with buyer and seller and locking in mortgage rates as well, from what I've heard.
Yeah, I mean, you can go down the path of prescribing a time period. You just have to be very careful that, you know, you're dealing with actual business days and not, you know, calendar days, because, you know, we're not open every day of the week and we're not open during holidays and such.
And under C talks about forms, and I know kind of in that packet that I gave out, when you look at the city of Dearborn, Southgate, and Lincoln Park, probably their websites are most comprehensive in terms of walking residents and individuals through the process of the needs. And here are all the forms that are available, and here's the checklist. And in most cases, it's a 1 or 2 pager, so it makes sense. And we're dealing with a lot of unknowns when we talk about the 8-page handbook code that you sent me, and how we get down to that to communicate and share with the public and even us to know what a rental inspection is actually going to look like. Is there any work that's taking place on what that checklist is going to be, and user commissioner ability to understand steps?
Not at this point. I mean, we've got 6 months to implement it, so it wouldn't be prudent for us to, you know, spend the staff time now not knowing whether or not this is something you want to do. But I mean, it's very, very much the same as, albeit in a much more simplified fashion as the rental housing inspection process. It's the same nature. The certificate is essentially the same. It's when you get a rental housing inspection, it's certifying compliance with the property maintenance code, the same as this inspection will be. The difference is that this one is limited only to the exterior of the property. It has nothing to do with the interior of the structure. And so it will be fairly simple. There's one chapter in the property maintenance code that deals with that. You know, I can't imagine that an inspector, other than if they're also doing the measurements for the assessor, which we hope they will, as part of the process, that it would take more than 15 minutes to do an exterior only point of sale inspection for residential property.
As far as I can tell, there's only one place where it says exterior in the whole ordinance, and that's under definitions and premises, the exterior areas. I think one of the concerns was to make sure that people understand it is only exterior. And I don't know if we can add exterior to another place in here, or if that's even necessary.
Well, the way we structured it was we defined that term, right?
Mhm.
So we say we inspect the premises are defined as only the exterior. So everywhere that premises appears as a term in the ordinance, it means the exterior only.
Okay, all right. And then also in, I don't know, section C on page 5, could you go over it says the standard for such inspection shall be the minimum necessary to prevent the spread of residential blight to safeguard life or limb, health, property, and public welfare, as set forth in the property code. What would be some things that would be minimally we would be looking for?
The classic thing would be peeling paint or, otherwise the siding in disrepair. I mean, that's the most obvious example of what would fail an inspection under the property maintenance code, the exterior of a residential structure. Now, if you had broken porch rails, you had a roof that was clearly deteriorated, other parts of the home falling off, those would all be things that would fail under the property maintenance.
Would it be also things like junk in the yard, missing windows?
Oh, yeah. Now, I mean, one would hope that if you're trying to sell your house, you're not going to have a bunch of junk in the yard, but yes, those things are also covered by the property maintenance code, in addition to actually probably the zoning ordinance, which is also, there is a review for compliance with the zoning ordinance as well. Again, that would only cover things like you were talking about, junk and rubbish.
Just to
Stacy,
get
I'm sorry.
a feel for like, what would they be looking for? What would be the basic things that that the inspectors would be looking for in an inspection?
Yeah, I mean, it's really just going to be principally the upkeep of the exterior of the structure.
safety issues would be addressed, wouldn't they? I mean, if you've got steps that are missing or broken and fallen and
If there were things like that, again, the property maintenance code doesn't prescribe how you build things, like the building code does. It just prescribes how you maintain them.
It does not subscribe or prescribe the color of the paint or the siding. I know I saw that, with a couple of things. We do not do that.
No, it has nothing to do with that.
Okay.
How does this relate to estates or transfer of ownership within families when someone passes, or the addition of another individual onto the title?
Yeah, this only applies to sales for compensation. So if you were, adding your child to your deed, it would not apply to that situation. That's not a sale.
After death?
It depends. If the estate is going to sell the property, then it would apply. If it's devised to the heirs of the decedent and there's no compensation involved, it would not apply.
would this cover land contracts?
I think it would. I mean, at some point it would for sure, but I think at the point where there's compensation, that's the point at which it applies.
The individual chooses to sell their house. In an ideal world, they would make the decision to sell their house. They would apply to have their home inspected well before this process.
Yeah.
They receive a number of notices of what they need to fix prior to the sale. And does that then start the clock ticking for them, or how does that work?
No, I mean, there is the ability to sell the property with the deficiencies. It's just that the purchaser has to acknowledge their responsibility to correct those things and there has to be funds escrowed after the sale for the cost of those things.
Or they could have it done beforehand.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
We would hope that, folks would have the inspection. If there were issues, I think, many times there won't be, that those would be corrected before the time of closing. And then then you get your certificate, there's no compliance, and you're good for 3 years.
So the laundry list comes up and I'm on page 6 under conditional approval. And it says, if after good cause is shown by the seller, the correction of deficiencies cannot be readily accomplished prior to the sale, the building official may issue a certificate, conditional certificate of compliance. So so I have a seller. I have a buyer. I have my laundry list of issues. That doesn't say shall.
No, there's discretion. I mean, that's true anytime the building official issues a temporary certificate of occupancy, for example, that's within the building official's discretion. We don't abuse our discretion. If there's a good reason, then we allow that to happen. In this case, in my own view, if you have a timeline for sale that does not allow for the work to be done in advance of that, then that's a reason. But, then you need to go through the procedure of getting the buyer to acknowledge responsibility and put the money aside.
And that's when it would be a conditional CO.
Correct.
But here, under here, it says the conditional sale. Is it correct here that they may issue a conditional certificate of compliance?
The conditional certificate is to allow you to go ahead and have the sale without violating this ordinance.
But they only may issue it, not shall issue it.
Correct.
Correct.
Subject to their discretion.
That I disagree with. Next, under on the bottom of 6, it says the standards for use for this inspection contained in the current International Property Maintenance Code. But yet on the page before, it talks about the IMPC, and then it talks about additional inspection criteria with zoning compliance. Should there be note of zoning compliance there or not?
What was the paragraph on 6 you were looking at?
C on the bottom. No.
No, I would not add that in there.
Top of page 7, the information contained herein is based upon limited inspection. So that still goes back to the international expectation. So limited inspection on those.
Well, limited in that regard, but also limited in the sense that it's the exterior only.
Do we have a estimate of how many houses this would impact?
Well, I mean, I gave you the number in terms of the frequency of it. And how many houses do we have in town? I do have that number. I don't recall it off the top of my head. I think I might have given that to you in an email.
I mean, in terms of, so we have the issue that we're looking at this. If we're saying there's going to be 300 inspections a year, would 50 of them result in a violation? Would 100 of them result in some sort of improvement? Do we know?
Right, exactly. I mean, you don't know which houses are going to sell at which time.
Mhm.
Commissioner Castleberry, make sure your mic is on. Thank you. Thank you.
We wouldn't have those numbers, though. I can interject. We wouldn't have those numbers. We can guess, but that's, That's not something that you'd have. Every year is different.
Right. My point here is it is a majority of the homes of those 300 homes being inspected are they already in compliance, and are we having our residents pay a fee that for a fully compliant house already?
Yeah, it just depends on which part of the city you're talking about, how recently they were built. We can't predict which houses are gonna sell when.
I did ask that question of the realtors who emailed me, and I did receive several responses back, and taking a rough guess, I would say it was in the 15% range. But I'm not sure that realtors know what all goes into that property code and what we are looking for. Can and should be fixed before a new family moves into a home. But a couple of them did reply to that question, and if I read through them correctly, I would say about 15% of the homes for sale would have to have some sort of remediation based on the experts.
That's close to the number with the people with whom I've spoken to.
About
They said
15%.
15 could go up or down. They said just 15%.
Is a certificate of occupancy, does that come with the inspection, or is that a separate fee?
No, it's a certificate of compliance.
Compliance, okay.
Certificate of occupancy is a term of art under the building code. That's for new construction, basically, or reoccupancy, where there's a change of use. You haven't set the fees. You'll have a fee schedule, but I would not presume that the certificate of compliance would be a separate fee from the inspection.
So with 24 inspections a month, if everyone chooses to have a city inspector perform that task, who on our staff would be doing that work for 24 hours that month?
My working assumption is that it's going to be the code officer who doesn't do rental housing inspections.
And then the issuing of the compliance permit, that's done by the same person, or is that done by a different person?
No, that's done by administrative staff.
Just for my commissioners, on that handout that I gave you on page 5 and 6, it was a compilation from Titleosity that shows a number of local cities in Southeast Michigan and the number of cities that have pre-inspections or some type of information on there. This was helpful when I met with a resident from Adrian who works for a title company. Would there be a sliding scale in terms of a house that, there are 11 houses in 2023 that were sold that were under $50,000. Would those houses be charged the same amount as a larger house?
Again, that's a discussion you'll have when you set the fee, but I don't think the amount of work required is substantially different based on the price of the home. Unless, you're talking about the size of the home, in which case it could be different, but as I think about it, I don't think there's enough of a distinction between, single residential units to justify a distinction in the fee.
Management of escrow. The titled individual I spoke with, they had managed escrows for point of sale inspections in Washtenaw County. Would that be managed through title companies? Or I know you previously said that the city would manage escrows as well.
I think what I said is that the city of Wyandotte manages their own
Okay,
escrows. You know, I don't think it has to be one or the other. You know, again, the ordinance, just as it's written currently, just prescribes that there shall be an acceptable escrow, which doesn't have to be cash even, as it's written. It could be a surety bond. You know, so I think it could be either. If you're not hooked up with a title company, then the city could handle it. But if you are, then I think the title company could handle it.
I think some of the concern too was that Detroit, and obviously Detroit's a different monster than the city of Adrian, couldn't manage this process to meet the needs of its residents. Are we able to meet the needs of our residents with this?
Yeah, I don't envision this being much of an administrative burden for us. Having worked with the city of Detroit's government over the years, I can understand how that might have been a challenge for them.
How do we respond that this is a money grab from the city?
With what I said earlier, which is that by law, we can't charge a fee that is anything other than covering our costs for performing the service.
How do we respond to the fact that the information we're saying is that only 15% of the homes are impacted, so we're charging a fee to 85% of the home sales that would not need to pay the fee otherwise?
Well, I don't think you know that without the inspection. And so that's what you're paying for, is the inspection that allows the buyer to know they have a compliant home. And you don't have to pay. We're obviously going to have a distinction in the fee based on whether or not you want to have our inspector do it or a private inspector do it, right? So there's a basic fee for the certificate, which would be very nominal, I would imagine. And then there's the fee to perform the inspection.
So one area of concern I had in my neighborhood, there was a house that was purchased within the last 3 years. And when they sold the house, there was an illegal accessory building that was made of aluminum tubes and canvas. So I was very optimistic that this would catch that. And however, that house was purchased within the last 3 years, and that certificate of occupancy or compliance is good for 3 years. Would that have caught this house that is out of compliance now?
Well, if the ordinance were in effect when it's sold, then yes, you know, that the inspection that's done under this ordinance, if there were a structure, that's why the reference to the zoning ordinance, right? If there's a structure that is not an allowed structure on the property, which, you know, happens with some frequency.
He bought the house 2 years ago. He sold it a year later. So does he need to have that home inspected again, was the question.
Your certificate is good for 3 years. Once you know, again, we're talking about the scenario where this is in effect. Your certificate's good for 3 years. So, you know, now if you've done something in the meantime, yeah, under your hypothetical there.
Well, no, it's a real.
Well, under your scenario there, if you did something, you know, by way of, you know, putting up a accessory structure without a permit in the meantime, then this particular ordinance isn't going to catch that as it's written. Then I don't know how you would, other than to require it always at every sale, right? And the idea with allowing the certificate to be good for 3 years is to not be overly oppressive with the terms of the ordinance. And, you know, if it's recently been inspected, then that should be evidence that the property is reasonably compliant. Yeah, and then when you're buying property, you really should be looking into whether the things on your property were done with permission or not. Although all our permits are available online, they're all in BSNA, so one who is doing their due diligence can see those things, but this particular ordinance would not catch your neighbor there.
Well, we have a moment. I want to thank you again, for making yourself available in the last 2 weeks to have us come in and talk with you at your office. It was really very, very convenient to bring our questions to you and raise them and talk about them. So I, again, appreciate you having that time for us to, as commissioners, come in and speak with you. That was very beneficial.
I'm here to help.
Does the work need to be done by a contractor, or can an individual do it?
The work to
Paint the house, cut down the
yeah,
tree.
no, anybody who, so you can always do the work on your own house that you own. Whether or not work that might need to be done falls within the realm of things that a residential builder would have to do if you're not doing it yourself, is a question. That I can't imagine that most of these things would be in that category, but some things might, if they're more substantial repairs.
So we go through this process, and I've heard quite a bit of praise of our inspectors in terms of working with rental properties and so forth. So inspections on the outside, we don't necessarily know what's on the inside. The sale takes place, and then the scenario is you need to paint the outside of the house, and here's your timeline. And then the new owner says there's knob and tube electrical in here, and there's roof leaks. And I'd much rather fix the roof leaks and the knob and tube first compared to painting on the outside. How strict are our timelines and feedback with our building department? How's that flow through to balance the needs of the homeowner and the exterior for blight?
Yeah, I mean, under that scenario, you're already, I mean, at the point where you become the owner, you're already going to have agreed to a timeline and escrowed the funds for it. Now, one would hope that you did your own interior inspection and you already knew all that and you wouldn't have agreed to it if it wasn't reasonable for you to do.
And would that timeline, there's no, I know some of the other cities, there's some very firm, 90 days, 180 days, the flexibility on that with between the buyer and the building department, that's flexible as they lay out their plan.
Yeah, as long as it's a reasonable amount of time, and these are reasonable people, and if it's winter, we're not going to say you have to have your house painted in 90 days. Obviously, it has to be something that can be physically and reasonably accomplished.
The two last points is last weekend I was at the Michigan Municipal League Conference and spoke with individuals from Monroe that has a point of sale, and then also from Westland. And from the elected officials' perspective, this has been a lot around, they said, so long that it just becomes common practice. Realtors are well aware of the steps that need to take place. Sellers are more and more aware of it, and communication goes out. The other aspect of that is in that same lunch session, then they all complained about blight within their cities as well. So it's not the be all end all. I received a copy of like the recommendations from that blight committee from 2021 that was taking place. And there was emphasis on, interns, additional work in the summertime to address blight. Is that anywhere on our radar to add additional short-term help through college kids in the summer, things like that, to do weeds and garbage cans so Glenn can do more enforcement?
No, not currently. I mean, again, that committee was independent of the city, obviously, and we didn't buy into everything that was recommended. I think some amount of discretion and professionalism is required in dealing with all of these kind of matters, and you don't want somebody who's inexperienced with such matters sending out notices to our residents to do this and that with their property. I think that's
Well, that's why I say garbage cans and grass.
right. But while garbage cans, yeah, even garbage cans, you'd be surprised. There's a lot of gray area about where the trash totes can be, and yeah, you don't want to, again, be overly oppressive. I think you've got to have some amount of decent judgment to be doing any kind of code enforcement work.
Great. Thank you for my barrage of questions. Those were, also for the audience as well as for all of us up here.
Would it be
Or-
fair to say that we're not looking for this to be the end all, fix it, magical potion, but we're looking at it as a point to help and assist with blight? Is that a
Yeah,
fair
no,
statement?
it's just one tool in the toolbox, and this is, as we've talked about, I think we are making great traction with rental housing and the inspections we do there. And the other category of residential blight that is unaddressed is owner occupied housing that's not kept up. And one thing in the comment we get is, well, okay, why don't you go out and enforce the ordinance against all those people then? But the beauty of this procedure is that you're doing so at a time when the money's on the table. It's not at all uncommon for a property owner to be in over their head with their commitment to a piece of real estate and not have the money to afford to have it painted, and maybe not be physically able to paint it themselves. At this point in time, when the property is selling and the money is changing hands, the seller's cashing out, it's just getting the money right as it relates to what needs to be done to that property, and advantaging the buyer in that they're not buying a pig in the poke where the code official is going to come by, code enforcement officer is going to come by the next week after you buy it, which happened to me once on a house right after I bought it, and write you up for a property maintenance violation for something that you didn't even own prior to that time. It's making sure that's what's being marketed is, at least as it relates to the exterior of that building, in a good condition for the buyer. And you're doing that at a time when the seller should have the money to devote to that, or where between the buyer and the seller, they can agree to an apportionment of the money to take care of those things which should have been taken care of.
How would that over $400,000 we're getting, how could this be helpful in the use of this with sales?
Well, those who are planning ahead, we hope, and again, that's available to people from low to middle income, up to 120% of AMI, I believe. If you're planning ahead, you get in there and you go ahead and access those grant funds to get these kinds of maintenance issues taken care of. And these are things that would be eligible for the use of those funds. And then problem solved. And
That's what I was hoping you would say.
yeah.
Is there any hope with our revolving loan fund of coming back, or is that DOA?
We don't currently have a strategy for rolling that out unless we find other funds that are not property taxes, essentially, grant funds that would be available to plug into that fund for that purpose.
Okay. So no general fund dollars.
No, but like I said, when I talked about the MISTA grant, MISTA's intent, though, we used to do exactly what the revolving loan fund was intended to do back in the day when we had a housing department. But we did it with CDBG funds, which no longer flow to the city. The way MISTA is now infusing those CDBG funds into non-entitlement communities is this program that we were fortunate enough to get a $400,000 grant from. And MISTA's intention or stated intention is that they will continue that program and reinfuse that money from one cycle to another. Once you get, in fact, when you get experience with the program, you're entitled to ask for more money than you got the first time around. So we're hopeful that that will continue and be a renewable source of funding for this kind of work. And it, of course, is grant funding instead of a loan.
One of the questions that has come my way is the concern over the aging population, and that if these elderly parents become suddenly very sick, or God forbid they die, now the family, and maybe they don't have any money or the resources, and they're trying to sell this home and they have to do the work, will they be able to apply for a grant and get it quickly and do it on behalf of that that owner, because that owner may be deceased or may be in assisted living, in like Lenawee Med facility or one of those places, and incapable at that point. But there was, that is because a concern, and I'm just curious, and that has been brought to me quite a few times.
Well, we haven't been trained on the MISTA program yet, so I don't know how strict it is in terms of who can, who has an interest that can apply. But, in the scenario that you're talking about, if their intention is to sell the property, then they can sell the property. They just have to apportion the money after the sale so that the needed repairs get taken care of.
So they wouldn't, just to clarify, just so that, because I know that's what I've been trying to explain to clarify, they wouldn't have to have the money themselves up front to get that done. If there was no grant money left, or if they couldn't apply for that grant. It is something that could be figured into the sale of that home, and they would just get less money from the sale of that home because it would be agreed upon and going over to the buyer.
Right, that's the conditional certificate of compliance process that Commissioner Benke was talking about. That's what that's there for, is you can work it out with the buyer as long as they assume the responsibility and money is set aside after closing. Then it doesn't have to happen before you have the funds available to do.
And does that money need to be set aside, or can the house be set with a as-is price, and then I buy as a handyman, knowing that I'm going to need to spend, I spend 50,000 for the house, and I'm going to need to spend 30,000 out of pocket to make repairs to that house?
I think it could happen either
That's it.
way, but you're as the buyer, your conundrum is going to come in terms of giving security. So you're going to have to give some kind of security that you're going to do the work.
Right. Yeah. I just want to make sure that we know that it's both ways on that front.
Right.
And do we go down, the one comment that I received was, so we can have residents make a choice when it comes to having a city inspector or going to a private inspector, the way that this is set up. But
Right.
yet, there's other examples where we mandate everyone to use the same trash collection services. Does that create a problem for us as we move forward?
That's apples and oranges. I mean, there's obviously a reason why you have to have one trash contractor, because of the economies of scale with that and the ability to get a decent price for everybody. But this is not in that nature.
Another question that has been brought to me quite a few times is that there are a large amount of our single family homes that are rentals, but they probably are not in the rental inspection. So if they were to go to sell this, then, they will not be exempt if they have not gone through. I just want to clarify that they're correct. They will
No,
not be exempt. They will have to still go through this process as well, because that is a concern of many, the single family homes that are the rentals. might be able to skate under, and there's many that see a lot of them as more of the blight problem. So
Right.
just
They don't-
clarifying that.
If they don't have a rental certificate, they would not be exempt. Other questions? Well, as I said, this is on your agenda for introduction tonight, so hopefully I've given you all the information you need to make a decision. Next up, and giving me the chance to take a break from talking for a minute, are your revised rules of procedure, which when you decided to modify the public participation section last time, I went ahead and asked city attorney to go through the whole document and suggest any changes that he thought should be made, and I'll let him explain those to you at this point now. We did get a comment from a citizen that we had not taken gendered language out of the rules, and so he has subsequently removed that from the proposed rules and created a draft that has that removed. But I'll turn it over to Burke.
So there was an email that went out this afternoon that had those last changes, but besides that, everything is in the packet. Basically, what I did is I went through, and as I was reading through this 19-page document, I realized that you were quoting your charter or you were quoting state law quite often. And I noticed in some cases it didn't match the charter. So I went back and removed the language that is law that you have to follow anyways. So it's not a 19-page cumbersome document. I tried to make it so that you could read it. It lays out the general rules. It gives points of order. I mean, although those are subjective, you could always change those yourself, but it shows just some of the typical points of order that you might run into. You do have a parliamentarian, which is your city attorney. So if there is a question on a point of order or a motion, I would be able to answer that for you. I did not touch the table of contents because I wanted to make sure you wanted to change everything that, or accept all the changes that I made. I think this document was pulled from a PDF. That's why it's so discombobulated. But once we get the approval, I'll change all that for you. Really, it's just, that's what I removed. The other big thing is the city administrator we had discussed, I believe 2 meetings ago, we had discussed incorporating the work study session into the meeting itself, which is kind of like tonight. This would be great if it was 1 meeting and not 2. And so you can see that in there. And we say in there also that typically the work study sessions will be included in it. Doesn't mean it has to be. It doesn't mean you can't have a different work study session if you want to, but in general, that's the way it's going to be. We put in a draft, or excuse me, a template of what your agenda will look like. Your public comment in the beginning of the meeting, and it is going to be, my suggestion is it go before your work study session so that everything can be commented on before you discuss it. And then you'll have a second public comment at the end in which you can talk about, citizen can talk about anything they want to. You will have your 3-minute limits. So you do address public hearings in here, and keep in mind that a public hearing is different than public comment. You know, one of the things I think we talked about was sometimes you tend to have public hearings on every item, and that's not really a public hearing. A public hearing is statutorily set, and you have those. Actually, you have several of them. The consent agenda, I took out the requirements, or excuse me, what you had put as requirements, because you can put anything you want on a consent agenda as long as it's routine. But in the change of the way the meeting is going to be run, now you will allow the public to comment on the consent agenda before it's voted on. Remember, on a consent agenda, it must be unanimous. If it's not unanimous, then it's obviously not routine. So if there's something, if you're ever going to want to vote no on a consent agenda, keep in mind, I will stop you. There is decorum in here, and I took some of that out, but one thing that I did add in was something on Zoom, because Zoom is becoming more prevalent. And what I added in there is just that we want to follow the same rules of decorum that you follow when you allow people into the chambers. Does anyone have any questions?
Is there any? So previously currently, individuals, when there's an item for action, can speak 3 minutes on those specific items. So you could have an individual that could speak 9 minutes, let's say, if there are 3 items that pertain specifically to their concern. And now they're only allowed to speak for a total of 3 minutes at the beginning on a specific agenda item, and then afterwards they can speak on any item.
Correct. You are set up how most municipalities are set up.
Okay.
With this change. The way the city of Adrian has done it is not normal. And I can tell you that from the many municipalities that I represent and my job with the county before this. I mean, you always have discretion yourself, but yes, that is how it's set.
And with your experience, are there any municipalities that would do 5 minutes or more time at the beginning for agenda items and then 3 at the end?
Actually, the only one that I know that doesn't do 3 minutes does 2 minutes. So 3 minutes is pretty much the norm. Like I said, the only one, I don't know anybody that does more than 3 minutes, but I do know one community that does 2 minutes.
Counselor, just want to be sure, I'm sure I read it. Any one of us can request that something on the consent agenda be moved to the regular agenda.
Absolutely. And it's not debatable. If you
Right.
ask for it to be removed, it is removed.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Because you
working on
could
this.
just vote no. And it would be-
Are any other questions for Burke? If not, can you kind of give me some guidance as to whether you'd like this on for action next time?
I would.
Okay, all right, we'll assume this is ready to go.
I will have to make a few changes, the content, table of contents and stuff.
Yeah, please. All right, our next item. Check the time here first. This is, we're running out of time, so. I'll just give you a brief summary. This is our normal time when we would check in regarding the strategic plan. So one of your goals under your strategic plan was to research how to attract Uber, Lyft, et cetera, ride sharing services to the city. So our economic development coordinator and I had occasion call, whether it was early last week or the week before, to meet with who we believe to be the one and only Uber driver in town, just to kind of pick his brain about what his challenges are and what it would take to attract others like him to the city. So Jay wrote me up a summary here of that, which I'll share with you. Currently extremely limited availability. Like I said, only one known part-time driver. He has to supplement his income with working in Toledo and Ann Arbor, which I don't think is really an issue. The goal is to have folks like that based here so that if there's a call, they're here. And if they want to go out to Ann Arbor or Toledo, that doesn't really hinder what we're trying to accomplish here, which is an availability of such people on the ride sharing app, close by, so that they're available to call if you're here, or to schedule a ride with if you're here. The expectations in the market right now per his observations is that that people don't think it's available, so they don't tend to use it. And so there's a re-education process with the population, but also it's a chicken and egg kind of thing because drivers are reluctant to work in this geographic area because there are a lack of customers. Uber Eats can help with that. He supplements his income by doing Uber Eats, which is a food and grocery delivery service. So in addition to giving people actual rides, they can do that delivery service that helps beef up the income. But restaurants are reluctant to sign up with Uber Eats because they don't believe there's a critical mass of drivers to do it. In contrast, DoorDash, which is not a ride-sharing service, but strictly a delivery service, is very prevalent in the area. So that's some evidence that there is a market for such things. One restaurant that recently signed up had 84 delivery orders with DoorDash on one Friday.
And
So
what, on one Friday,
one Friday,
84?
according to my notes here, which came from, so I'm attributing that to Jay, so. The guy we talked to thought that if there were 4 to 6 drivers in this area, that would be a reasonable number for our market. And so the question is how to attract them. The suggestions were, doing surveys to demonstrate demand, but then, to get people to commit to it, the idea was that, and I've read this regarding other municipalities who have tried to incentivize ride-sharing services as well, that you provide a subsidy for a period of time to kind of prime the pump to get them started in the area. It doesn't go on forever, but until the market is up and running, you kind of got to help them out for some period of time, whether it's a year or whatever it might be. The guy we talked to thought that $100 a week would be enough to incentivize somebody. I don't know if that's the right number or not. So that's just something that we learned that goes to your strategic plan goal that I would like you to be able to think about, and happy to answer any questions about the discussions we had and what we learned. He seemed very excited that we would want to support him, that we were interested in what he was doing.
I just know that my kids, when they came to visit, saw the Uber driver and they were excited.
I'm sorry. I just know that over Mother's Day, our kids came down, they saw the Uber car somewhere and they were excited that because where they live now, they all have Uber. And they thought that was great that.
Yeah, I used it extensively before I lived here, and you relied on it for various things. Cars in the shop, you're all set. You just go on your app and schedule an Uber for wherever you want to go. Other questions?
No, but I just want to reiterate to everyone in the public that this was an idea that came out of the City Commission strategic planning last July, that this was something we wanted our city staff, city administrator to look into, whether or not it could come to fruition, because we'd been hearing that our residents need more options to get to doctor's appointments, to get to work, to just get to wherever they need to go. So I appreciate you following up with that. We hope to continue to look into some other options for transportation.
And the other thing you wanted to do as part of your strategic plan, one of your tasks was have a conversation with our transportation coordinator, or the county transportation, or the county transportation authorities coordinator, about what they're doing now. And I did invite her tonight. She was not able to come tonight, but she's coming at your next check-in. So second meeting in June, Kate Deisher will be here to talk about what Lenawee County Transportation Authority is doing right now as well. So you can kind of judge where the gaps are and what needs to be filled in.
Great, thank you.
Okay, with that, Mayor, I've got through all my agenda items and.
For the second part of the second or actual meeting, and we explain to everyone what the first reading is and what to expect. So that, when this flies through and there's no discussion on it, they know that that's part of the process. And then secondly, so if we've met with one Uber driver on transportation on a issue there, and we have our entire audience full here, is there any opportunity for the development department to set up a meeting to meet with concerned residents to hear concerns and have continued conversation on the topic of this ordinance?
So answering your first question first, introduction is by law, a city has to do what are called 2 readings to adopt an ordinance. An ordinance is legislation at the local level. And so at introduction, literally all that happens is the ordinance is introduced. The mayor will read the subject matter from the agenda, and that's it. The actual voting will take place at second reading. So conceivably at the next city commission meeting, it would be on again, if that's your desire. And at that time, the commissioners would vote on it. And if they voted on it, it would be enacted into law, subject to the effective date that it has to be published, but the effective date that I mentioned, which is 6 months or 180 days from the date of publication. As to community meetings, anything's possible. We're certainly willing to do it if that's the commission's pleasure. I think it would be more productive to do that at a time when we have developed the procedures and know how the implementation of the ordinance is in fact gonna work, if in fact you choose to pass the ordinance. So at this point, I don't know if it's the commission's pleasure to have such an ordinance at the point where that would be adopted. We have 180 days to do things like that and to develop the implementation procedures.
Thank you.
At this time, we will begin public comment. We will start inside the city chambers first. Just to reiterate, there is a 3-minute time limit and you will see it on the screen. And when your time is exhausted, you will be done speaking. And also, please state your name and municipality when you approach. Thank you.
Hi, Jeff Rising, City of Adrian. I sent you all a detailed email earlier, so I appreciate the responses that I got back. A couple of things that weren't addressed in the pre-meeting. When the notice of deficiencies are given to the seller and they decide it's too costly to sell the house, what happens then? You know, they already got a violation, so now you've already opened up that can of worms and they may not have the money to replace a roof or siding or all that stuff. So that was one of my concerns, that placing an undue financial burden on home sellers that simply don't have the money to fix those things because they can no longer sell the property. One comment was made that, the conditional approval, oh, no problem, the seller can just take it out of their equity. Well, what if the seller doesn't have equity? One example we've seen a lot in the last few years is, say, for example, a home is listed for $150,000. It has multiple offers. Someone pays $175,000 over the appraised value. They're already in the hole when they started. 2 years later, when they go to sell the house, they're still underwater. Then they don't have the equity to fix all the deficiencies in that case either. We did talk about the number of sales. I came up with 194 home sales in the Realtor MLS. There were 300 according to city records, so 100 private sales. And, I appreciate the comments that, well, we just don't know how many homes will be affected. Well, we could take a pretty good guess, right? We could take a pretty good guess of how many homes will be addressed by this ordinance. My estimation was about 15 homes. Like Commissioner Banky said, 11 homes sold last year were under 50,000. They were all cash sales. There were 35 home sales between 50 and 100,000, 13 cash, 7 were FHA finance, which the FHA inspection would have caught these issues anyway. And 15 of those were conventional financing. And all the other realtors here can agree with me, conventional financing is getting more and more strict these days as well. It's not just anything goes anymore for the conventional financing. So, I'm not opposed to fixing blight in the city. Yeah, I sat in your seat for 4 years. I'm aware of the problems the city has. I just don't think this is going to do it if this is only going to fix 15 or 20 or 25 houses a year. So that's just my opinion. And I appreciate your time, and I appreciate all the responses that I received from my email earlier. Thank you.
Robert Duke, City of Adrian. Kind of here again, I think the commission's a little out of touch with the citizens. Trying to push through ordinance stuff when we don't even enforce the ordinances that we have. One, you want to bring this forward, you don't even know how you're going to implement it. Mr. Elliott, I think you need to have that when you bring it to the table for people to understand exactly what you're talking about. You're just throwing out generalities that could come out as anything on the other end. We have ordinances now that aren't being enforced. You talk about that. I've brought it up to Commissioner Goss, to Commissioner Binky about your current enforcement officer who sits over here at the pavilion half the day smoking cigarettes in his truck. That's a fact, because I've sat and watched him. I've told this man about it. Oh, well, yeah. You guys need to start being on town, what's going on here in this town with the people. You're not talking to us. You're not speaking to us. It's a bunch of West Side, Trenton Hills crap. You're not representing most of this town. And I think you need to think about it. Elections are going to come. We can also do recalls.
Yeah, my name is Gideon Ballou, and I'm a resident in the city of Adrian. And first, I'd like to thank the commission for something that they did several years ago. In 2012, my mother was diagnosed with cancer, and my dad came before the board and requested an ordinance for a greenhouse, which he had erected already in the city. And thank you for adopting the greenhouse ordinance. My dad slept in that greenhouse many nights, making green juice for my mom. And I have to say, without chemo or radiation, 12 years later, my mom is cancer-free, and thank you for that. Also, I'd like to thank Commissioner Gordon Goss and Kelly Castleberry for frequently visiting the community housing meetings we have with landlords. And that is not unnoticed, and it goes a long way to fostering trust, which I think is foundational to cooperation within the city of Adrian. And thank you to all that came out and great support. I think maybe a little more than expected tonight, and many that are standing long, and I appreciate that. And I would like to encourage everyone to voice your opinion. The city doesn't know whether you're in opposition or whether you're in support unless you come and speak. And so I'd encourage you all to take your time to do that. And then let me say, in 2008, I bought my first property in the city of Adrian. I was dirt poor, grew up on a missionary budget with my dad overseas much of the time, and scraped together from my sister's credit cards and everybody's credit cards I could $6,000 to buy a property on Erie Street, and spent the next 4 years putting a roof and siding on the property. So I understand well a lot of the problems with blight in the city of Adrian. And thanks to the former trash policy of Adrian, I put my entire roof in boxes on the curb, and they took it all. And then let me say, in the last 4 years, the organization we have, which is Lenawee Renewed with its partners City Rental Homes and Maple City Homes, has in its budget spent more than $1 million in the last 4 years in repairs in most of these blighted areas in the city. And then let me say this, I am very much, because of what I have done, we've bought out of tax foreclosure, vacancy, and many other things, and I very much support, I think, what you're intending to do with the blight policy. But I very much am opposed to how it seems to be rolling out and what will take effect. The Hippocratic Oath among medicine is first, do no harm. And I'd like you to consider whether or not this policy will create more harm to the city of Adrian than the good it will. And I think that the commission would be irresponsible not to know the numbers of how many people would be affected. And I think you can know. And thank you for your time.
Well, Sandra Hill, and I've been in the workforce for,
Can you state your municipality, please?
oh, I'm sorry, City of Adrian. Okay. I was in the workforce for 50 years and out of that 50 years, 48 of it was here in Lenawee County. I was a single parent raising 2 children by myself. I didn't have a lot of money, but I was lucky and fortunate enough by myself to purchase a total of 3 homes, sold 2 of them. I bought my first home here in the city of Adrian, in the city. The other 2 were in the country. But I guess I'm having a problem with this situation that you have here because I bought my 3 homes as is because that's what I could afford. I was able to work on them, remodel them as money was able to be, as it came in. And it took 20 years for the first house that I bought to remodel that home. And when I sold it, I was able to sell it for a profit. And then I purchased another home within my budget. And I was able to pay that off and send my kids to further schooling. And I had to do it by myself. I'm still by myself. And then when you made the comment about just taking it out, when it's time to sell this house, use the equity or whatever it may be, you know what? It may not be there. I've battled 2 bouts of cancer already. My children are grown up with families of their own. I'm still on a fixed income. I'm retired, but I'm still on a fixed income. So when I go to sell this house, and you may deem the fact that I may have to put a roof on or whatever it may be, I have health issues. I'm getting older. I can't go out and do the things that I used to do. The money might not be there and you may find me because I might not be able to financially afford it. So I don't think that this particular plan that you have is suitable for people like me who are getting older and have health issues. I prefer to be able to sell my home as is because there might be another person like me in the last 50 years
Your time
who
is up.
would
Thank
be,
you.
who would purchase it.
Good evening. My name is Gary. I'm a City of Adrian resident. I don't have a dog in this race. I'm not a real estate buyer and seller. I think, quite frankly, it should be called what it really is, and that's an exit tax. And that's exactly what it is. You're taxing people to move out of the city. You know, this whole thing is based on the blight issue in Adrian. 4 years I've been fighting, 4 years, just trying to get by, making a better piece of property that I live on Center Street. And there's a property down there that y'all don't want to do anything about. I've talked to you about it. I've come into your office, and quite honestly, I was not really impressed with the disrespect that I felt from you. Talked to you. I just think if you're all going to do something about the blight in Adrian, let's do something about the blight in Adrian. We don't need more ordinances or charges. Let's take care of the problem. If you got a guy that's not doing his job, fix it. Fix it. You all have the power to do that. I'm just aggravated. You're going to see, I don't care, union or non-union. You're going to see my face more, and you're going to get tired of seeing it. Thank you.
Carrie Smith, City of Adrian. I manage a title insurance agency and have the privilege of working with realtors, lenders, buyers, and sellers every day. I would argue that this affects every city resident that owns a home, because in order to be able to sell your home, you have to pay an inspection fee that's going to be imposed on you, whether you like it or not. And the comment that it depends what part of the city we're talking about really exposes some implicit bias. One of the benefits to living in our country is the ability to participate and engage in the free market. A city point of sale ordinance imposes regulatory requirements that can contradict the free market principles of voluntary transactions, price determination, competition, and minimal regulations. Government interference and overreach affects the principles as follows. Interference in voluntary transactions. Sellers and buyers are forced to comply with additional governmental requirements, which can alter the terms of their agreement. Distorted prices. The cost of compliance can affect the sale price, and sellers might increase prices to cover these costs, potentially reducing demand or making properties less affordable. Reduced competition. Lower income property holders might struggle to meet the ordinance requirements, reducing their ability to compete in an already difficult market. And increased barriers to entry of homeownership for lower income households. The point of sale may also impact the buyer's ability to obtain financing with the lender and participate in certain loan programs designed to benefit them. Mr. Elliott also references, all this money that's at the closing table. And I will tell you right now, I've spoken with title companies in municipalities where these ordinances are in place, and they will not even schedule a closing until that certificate of occupancy or certificate of compliance is issued. So how do we get to the table where all the money is if we haven't fixed anything to that point? Because I will not take on the liability of these repairs. The efforts and energies of this commission would be better spent looking at enforcing the policies and ordinances that are already in place that do not violate Fourth Amendment rights of citizens and their ownership of private property, residents' ability to participate in a free market as it relates to their private property, and ordinances that don't inadvertently lead to discrimination against protected classes such as the elderly, minorities, and the disabled, whether it's physical disability or mental health issues. Thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Steve Brand. I'm the owner of Excel Realty, and I operate the business right here in Adrian, and I live in Palmyra Township. I sent every one of you an email today. I hope you read it. And then I sent the call to action email, and I've got a question because the question came back to me from Gordon Goss that he had 20,000 constituents that supported him. Well, I have 20. You said many of them do. That's what you said. You want me to read the email? So there are approximately 20,000 people that live in Adrian that this will affect. That number has gone down over time. I was a realtor during 2008 when the market crashed. I've been doing this for 25 years. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. In 2008, if you would have made a home seller have to go through this process, they were already in foreclosure. And I have an idea that you'll forgive banks, just like Freddie and Fannie did. And I do not believe that is in the best interest. I have a home right now that I would like to list, and it has problems, and these problems would fall under the issues that you're doing, but it also falls under most of the lender issues that can be covered and are covered through home inspections and through an appraisal where the appraiser then says the things that need to be fixed. Why are we adding more to that list? There was a comment made to me by a realtor of one of the people up here who said, well, realtors are just looking for an easy way out. If you'd like a tough profession, I'll sign you up. Because the rules and the regulations that we have to go through fair housing and through the real estate red book with the state of Michigan I think I have enough rules to follow, and I don't need you to add to that. And I would like you to really look at what you're doing to the city of Adrian and the residents.
Hello, Stacy Walkden, City of Adrian. I'm coming from, I bought in the City of Adrian in 2008. Sorry, hold the mic up. I bought in the City of Adrian in 2008, a house that was foreclosed and would have underneath this ordinance have to have been all fixed up. It was a bank foreclosure, obviously, and it was a HUD house. We fixed it up, but we would not have had that opportunity had this ordinance been involved. Reading the language before I got here, it said it was to help enforce the ordinances that are already in place. If they're not already being enforced, causing the entire city of Adrian to have to pay a tax in order to sell their homes, whether they are in the blight or not. Again, it hurts your constituents and doesn't always fix the blight. I don't know how many blight homes there are in Adrian, 200, 500. Are they actually the ones being sold? Most of the houses being sold probably wouldn't fall under the blight anyway, yet you would be forcing all of them to go through find an inspector. Also, there was nothing in the language about how much those fees would cost. You would have multiple inspectors. There's nothing about timeframes. As we know in real estate, in trying to sell a home, which we are looking at selling ours, time is of the essence. When would those, if all of the red tape went through, okay, you have an inspection, there is no time frame when you would actually get your point of sale document. If you can't get that in a timely manner, if you have to move, then does your house go into foreclosure because you couldn't? Our house is paid off. That part doesn't bother us. But most people, if they have to sell, they wouldn't be able to get it in a timely manner in order to then sell their homes. Again, it is more, if we already have blight ordinances, why aren't they being enforced? What needs to happen to have them enforced? Not punishing the rest of the city of Adrian for the houses that are in blight. That actually hurts your constituents, not helps them. And it really doesn't help the city because how many of those houses are actually being sold? That wasn't also, was not also addressed in the language that was sent out. Thank you for your time.
Hi there, Jimmy Wayne, Adrian. I'm against this ordinance. I believe that it's a little bit of an overreach. I believe that, first of all, your complaints about blight. I believe if you wanted to do something about blight, why don't you go down and help paint those people's houses that need painted, help them put a gutter up, help them do something to their home, but except for penalizing them with a tax, basically, to someone. We have a code enforcement officer. He can go around and do things. In other words, you're going to tell me, I have a house I want to sell that doesn't have a gutter and the back of it's not painted. All right, I'm going to be penalized. Well, the person that buys my home might not have any problem putting a gutter up and painting that part. And it'll be reflected in the price of the home. And to me, that's the big difference. I believe that where you people are not seeing it. I believe most of you live on the west side. You need to buy a home on the east side and live over there for a little while. And you'll know a little bit more what's going on in the city of Adrian.
Don't do that because I get stuck in the snow for 3 days.
Yeah. Or garbage. That's another issue. The cans are just ridiculous. I mean, you got two properties beside one another. You own both of them. And you got to have all the trash cans. You can't have just for one. No, you got to buy, so I got enough trash cans for the whole neighborhood. You know, you want to throw trash? I can tell you where I live. Everybody come over there and dump trash. All the cans. I don't understand it. There's a time and place for ordinances. Government, there's a time and place for government. But there's also a time and place where there is too much government. And I believe this is overreach. Thank you.
My name is James Troll. I live in the city of Adrian. 2006, was it, Mary? Bought my first house, lost it. These fixer-uppers you guys are talking about, that's what I bought. I was able to come back, rebuild the house, make it my home. You do this, people aren't gonna be able to do that. You know, that's plain and simple. I raised 6 kids and I managed to do it with no help. To have you guys, I don't know where you live. Honestly, I'm gonna say it and I'm gonna be blunt. I don't give a fuck where you guys live. I don't care about the east side. I don't care about the west side. It's a community. Stop dividing. You know, I was at a planning committee meeting and I listened to several people. Well, I drove through this neighborhood. I drove through that neighborhood. I have a blight. You wanna know what my blight is? A $40,000 camper. I'm not moving it out of my driveway. I don't know why anybody would say that's a blight. If you have a problem with your neighbor, take it up with your neighbor. Don't come in front of here and say, oh, well, I want to push this, or this. You have landlords, and I'm sorry, I don't know how you are, but you have landlords that don't take care of their properties. Do something about it. You have Glenn, I will call him out, that sits in that office. I don't know him personally. I've never met him. I've never seen him out in the community. I've never seen him do anything. I've heard that there's another gentleman. He does his job. He goes around. If he's not doing his job, get rid of him.
Yeah.
I put in 13 hours today. If I don't do my job, my boss will fire me. So what's the deal? You guys are all sitting here. We've had several people bring this gentleman up. Can we get some answers? As for union, it don't matter. Look at all these UAW workers that signed a contract last year. How many got laid off? Unions don't mean anything. They don't mean what they used to mean. You know, I didn't catch the whole ordinance you guys are trying to push. I told you, Mayor, 2 years. No, I'm not moving out of the city. I've decided not to. Somebody tell me where I can find for $1,500 a year, plus utilities where I can live. My house is paid for. Now I may get a loan against it and buy some property out of the city. So as Watson put, so I can pay to play and I can pay for storage. I'm not paying somebody else. I'll pay for my own land. You know, this is ridiculous. There's plenty of people in my neighborhood that I know they struggle. They would love to buy a house. I had the luxury of meeting up with a local entrepreneur that bought a house, flips them, sells them. If he doesn't want to flip them, he sells them. I bought a house for a very cheap price. So you guys have a good day.
My name is Paul. I live here in Adrian. I'm a realtor. And I think this ordinance is very excessive. As realtors, we already have our properties looked at for if it's a VA, if it's a FHA. I mean, they're tough. And then we have our independent that we ask, you know, come look at them. There's no need for this ordinance because it's already taken care of. And if the buyer doesn't care to have that inspection, I think that's their right. You know, you shouldn't force that on them. It makes no sense. So, and they all do it. I mean, the percentage is very high. Okay. It's done. Now the seller has got to worry about, oh gosh, I have to fix that, pay for that. Well, guess what? After that inspection, if the buyer, they'll negotiate and they'll fix it, or they'll say, no, I'm not going to fix it. You're going to buy it as it is. So they can walk if they want to, and then the next person can come in. I mean, it's very confusing. When I was listening, I go, gosh, let's just make more confusion. Government's very good at that, by the way, and stuff. And you were introducing this, I'd introduce it to that door right there. And don't kick it on the way out.
Hello, Dan O'Cordy here. Good to see y'all again.
Can you state your
Four-
municipality,
City
please?
of Adrian. 400,000 is nothing for what you're trying to accomplish in the city. You come to a meeting like this, you should throw out some numbers. 4 mil. You're capable. We're a big city. We're the only city in this area of Lenawee County. We're supposed to be the biggest and driving city in Lenawee County. We have no work that makes good money. Money's scarce in this area. For everybody to uplift and get fined for everything is pretty complicated here. Your city inspectors are good. I'm not going to sit there and jab him, but he doesn't have a builder's permit either. So you need to get him a builder's permit for the city of Adrian. I don't mention names because that's not right, but you know who they are. You only got one, but you don't have him doing it. So in the conclusion of all this, we all need help. So we're all trying to reach out, and you guys are finding us for reaching out. It's going to hurt the realtors. Definitely, it's going to hurt the realtors. But we need to grow together and figure out something here. And your number to me is just too slow. And for Adrian College to keep buying property, which is, I'm good with that, but exempt from our taxes. So you're trying to find money elsewhere. And this is where the poor people come in and us come in. That's just my theory. I want to thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Ingrid Weber. I'm a resident in the city of Adrian. I think that you went too far for the issue at hand. I'm a homeowner. I've lived here since I've been 19 years old. I'm not going to talk about my age. And I'm up there, wrinkles. And I forgot my train of thought. Sorry about that. Anyway, you have, on the overreach, I'm going to sell my house as is because I'm willing to take a financial loss for not fixing it up by myself. And also the most important thing that I have to say tonight is I became a citizen of the United States in 2020 to vote. I don't vote for my city, never have voted for my city. And I've been to several elections. I vote only for my state. This will change this time around. I feel it's very, very important to vote because I would never vote for this issue. It affects too many people. Thank you for your time.
My name's Keith Moore. I'm not gonna stand up. But I'm from Adrian, also. I'll tell you a Cinderella story.
Yeah, can you restart this back? Yeah.
My name's Keith Miller and I'm from Adrian. I'll tell you a Cinderella story. I bought a house on Beecher Street, 3 houses east of the bank on Beecher on the north side. I had a friend that owned that house and he sold it to me for $10,000. It needed a foundation and a complete rebuild. I was a young kid. I was 23 years old, I think, at the time, and I completely rebuilt that house. I remodeled it, and I don't know, like 10, 15 years later, I decided to do a major remodel, and I took out a big loan, and we redid the whole house completely with a new siding, windows, doors, did a whole new insulation and new electrical, roof, everything. And then the bottom dropped out of the market in 2006. Thank you, Mr. Bush. And we lost everything. And that's how quick you can lose everything here in this world. And same way with this market now that we got here. And you guys want us to have an inspection, fix our houses, and we could lose everything in a matter of a heartbeat. And my house isn't worth everything now, but I put everything into this house and I'm disabled now. And if I need a new roof, I can't afford to do that right now. And if I do it, I'm never going to get the money out of my house if I ever did it. Thank you.
I'm Russell Richards, City of Adrian. I've come here today to voice my protest on the POS. First of all, this proposal ordinance is really a broad solution for a specific problem. I believe the current ordinances that we already have are not being enforced. I can look around my own neighborhood, cars that have been there in the front yard for 10 years plus. Other issues, you know, the lawn, the trash, the whole thing. I do want a clean, respectable neighborhood in the city. But I believe that maybe the city needs to partnership with the homeowners, maybe identify some houses or whatever, and maybe help them discover some grants to fix stuff instead of being this like a dictatorship forcing us to do this. There's a lot of people out there are willing probably to do this. I believe this is going to cause a lot of stress on people, especially when people have losing their loved one. Maybe they have to sell their house, maybe they have to, or their loved house, and maybe it wasn't taken care of properly, and people go into a nursing home or whatever, and now you're going to have an unwanted inspection, maybe repairs you can't afford, maybe you can't even afford the inspection. Again, I think we just need to partner with our homeowners and maybe find a solution rather than do this POS. Again, like I said, I think this is going to hurt our elderly, you know, our people on a fixed income. Plus this legislation, I think, slides into a slippery slope. I'll refer back to an article in the Daily Telegram on March 2nd, 2022, that a former commissioner said that this is outside and that it's going to be inside. Both. What is it? Did he speak wrong? I'm concerned about that because then you get into infringing on possibly my rights, you know. And it is interesting, though. I did do some research that there are many towns and states that have pushed this POS ordinances, but they have been fought with fiery resistance, and most all were overturned by federal courts, staying in violation of the Fourth Amendment. Thank you for your time.
Hello, Richard Henning, City of Adrian. Three things. Everybody said a bunch of really nice things, great things. Second thing, big fat no on this. Any government that's going to tell me what I can do on my property is unconstitutional. Third, any of you that think this is a good idea need to be voted out of office. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Jessica Foster from the City of Adrian, representing my son, David Foster, who is currently serving in a homeowner here in Adrian. My thing is, I just became a first-time homeowner. I call myself a homeowner, but it was totally my son, 23-year-old Marine, now 24. We have now been there for almost a year after my 53 years of renting. And it is a pleasure to call Adrian my hometown. My father was a state policeman. He retired out of the state police post here in Adrian, Gary Sauer. And when I had to pick a hometown, when you're the child of a Michigan state policeman, you don't have one. Michigan is my hometown. But when I decided to return after being married to military, moving all over the United States, we chose Adrian because it's a small town, it's safe. Our community members like each other. I think this policy would cause more division between our citizens. For instance, I learned that my neighbor's garage is built on my son's property. It was never approved by this commission. They brought it before the commission in 1960 and no action was taken. But they built the garage anyway. And it's on mine and my neighbor's property when it was split. And we're already paying taxes on it. When I came in to find out more information about it, everyone was so very helpful. The CIS office, all that. They printed out the pictures for me. They did all those things so that I can give my son the most information that I could. And my question about this policy is that every map that I've gotten from either the county or the city has all been different. In fact, the one I got from the city was different from the one on the wall hanging in your offices about where lines are for properties. So if you, as a city, don't even know what you're supposed to be inspecting, are you inspecting my neighbor's garage because she wants to sell her house and I decide to sell mine at the same time? Are you double dipping because her garage is in blight and is on my property? If you don't have your house in order, why are you messing with mine?
Diane Nochi, I'm from Adrian. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I'm a real estate agent and I like when people sell blighted houses or property because I know that there's an excited buyer out there who wants to turn that into a home and they want to make it better. So when I look around, there are homes that we're trying to get people to sell. Home on West Maumee, across from Maumee Court. It's a beautiful old historic home that's falling apart. We're trying to get them to sell it because I know somebody's going to turn in that house into a beautiful home. All of us can tell you, we have clients who have purchased homes. One client who just purchased home on the east side couldn't even get a mortgage on it because it was in disrepair. So he couldn't get a mortgage. It had to be cash. And then he brought it back to life and a family has that beautiful home now. So that happens all the time. And we want to get people selling those homes, give them an incentive to sell a home instead of them just sitting on that blighted property and saying, I'll just keep it because I'm not going to do this with the government, whatever. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
My name is Geraldine Boykin. I'm in the city of Adrian, and right now I'm voting no for the ordinance right now until we get a clear picture of like what's the pricing of everything. Because right now I know it's like a sliding scale and all this other stuff, but right now this is on private property, and therefore right now I'm voting no at this time.
Angie Werner, technically raised in township, but I also own properties in the city of Adrian. I'm just here to say that I'm against this ordinance being enacted for several reasons, but it's mostly because the people it's going to affect the most are low-income people. And I do know that's the people the city is trying to help the most. So that's the reason I'm against that. Not only that, but people buying the houses are fixing them up, but it takes time. And when you have these inspections, your time frame for getting things fixed, as I've learned in the rental home inspection, is a few weeks. It's hard to get contractors within a few weeks to come and fix anything, even when you're paying them good dollars. So the expectations of another inspection and people actually being able to get people to do the work when we're so shorthanded on labor in this town is also another factor. Thank you.
Hello, my name is John Sherman. I live in Adrian Township. I just want to come on the record and say I do oppose this. I think it's a huge overstep for the city of Adrian. I feel, I understand it takes place in other cities, and I feel it's a mistake. I don't know if there's a line of people outside that are going to come in and vote for this and encourage it. I haven't heard anyone I've talked to that want this in our city. So I don't understand why this is getting pushed through in the city of Adrian. I mean, and like she said, mostly the lower income people are going to get hurt the most. I mean, in the perfect world, if it's Ann Arbor or Traverse City or something where there's actually money in these houses, but when you got to come in here and who's gonna give the green light on this for a deal to go through, for a real estate transaction to go through? Who says, okay, it's good now? It's not the inspector. Who, you said it's an administrator. What administrator actually is going to do it? Or is there going to be a committee within the administrators that says, okay, or is it going to be one person? So now, what is the main asset that any family or any person owns in this country? It's our property. It's our property. It's our one thing in our country. And now you're going to come in here and say, no, you can't do that with that right now. No, we have to come over there and do it. I mean, there's so much already that these realtors have to go through and take care of to put these deals through. And you say all this money is on the table, but you hear all these instances of people that came in and got a piece of property and they worked on it for years and years to fix it up. That's all going to go away. And then what do we do with the bank foreclosures? How's that going to pan out? The bank takes the property back and now they got to sell it, but there's deficiencies. So who's going to pay the contractors to fix that? Or the Lenawee, when tax sale goes, how's that going to come back? So I'm all about fixing the Blythe, and I work on it every day. I fill my dumpster up, me and my guys on every level. I work my ass off in this town to try to make my properties better. But taking away our freedom and putting more, it's an overstep. That's all I got to say.
Megan Greenwell, City of Adrian. I'm a realtor. I've lived here my entire life. My family owns a small business here in Adrian. We take so much pride in our community, and I feel like this is going to be a problem. People are not going to view this well. As a realtor, when I come out to to a seller, then I have to tell them, hey, you don't have a blighted property, but we have this extra step. I can imagine those conversations not going well. I can imagine sellers walking away and going, well, I have to think about this. That's not right. I want to be proud of this community. I want to bring people together. And I don't think this is the option or the answer to do that. I also own a few rental properties. One of them's on Toledo Street. My husband and I have put $100,000 into this property. It was one of those blighted properties that needed the love. And I agree. I think that the buyer is the one that's going to put the love in, not the seller trying to leave. The other bit with us owning that property is I know it goes into making those properties what they need to be. And it's a large amount of money to expect, not that everything is going to be covered under that, your ordinance, but it's a large amount of money to expect a seller to expend. Thank you.
Natasha, City of Adrian. I'm against it. One, I picked a non-HOA for a reason. Another is a lot of places, or a lot of people want to sell as is, and there's buyers who want to buy as is. I understand that you're trying to make it look nicer, you're trying to do better. I don't really see how that'll happen. You're gonna make people want to leave or just not sell, and it's still gonna look like trash and worse than it does. Also, you have your older people who are just going to want to sell because they want to downgrade. And now you're telling them they can't because you're going to charge them for everything. And it is overstepping for sure. It's just not right. And then when are you going to stop? Honestly. Exactly. So you want to hear from the community, and the community is saying, we don't want this. So maybe it's time to listen. And instead of saying like you're doing it for certain people, let's get serious. This is the city of Adrian. If you're in the city of Adrian, you don't have money. So where's this money going to come from? Not us. We can't afford it. So instead of continuing to be like everybody else, raping the middle class, help your community, do something better. Go after the slumdog landlords, the ones who have multiple properties. That's where these houses are trashed. They're not doing anything because they just go ahead and they re-rent and re-rent and re-rent, and nothing gets done. So, no.
At this time, we will now open it up to Zoom participants. Just to reiterate, you will see the 3-minute time limit on the screen, and please state your full name and your municipality. Hearing no public comment, may I get a motion to adjourn the work study session? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned, and we will begin our regular meeting in 10 minutes because we're going to take a quick bathroom break. Thank you. I call to order the Adrian City Commission meeting for May 20th, 2024. If everyone would please rise for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor Heath,
Present.
Commissioner Benke,
Present.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Present.
Commissioner Roberts,
Present.
Commissioner Miller,
Present.
Commissioner Castleberry,
Present.
Commissioner Gauss,
Present.
all commission members present.
May I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Support.
I have a motion from Commissioner Banky with a second from Commissioner Miller. Roll call, please.
Mayor Heath,
Yes.
Commissioner Benke,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Castleberry,
Yes.
Commissioner Gauss.
Yes.
Approved by unanimous vote.
May I get a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved. Support.
I have a motion from Commissioner Castleberry and a second from Commissioner Roberts. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Benke,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Castleberry,
Yes.
Commissioner Gauss.
Yes.
Mayor Heath,
Yes.
approved by unanimous vote.
Just to reiterate and clarify, as we go into the ordinances, these are both first reading only. There will not be any public comment or commissioner comment or a vote at all this evening. It is a first reading only. Ordinance number 24-001 is a first reading and introduction of an ordinance to amend section 3.1 of Article 3 of the City of Adrian zoning ordinance and the zoning map to which reference is therein made to the extent of rezoning 440 East Church Street from an RO residential office district to an ERO education research and office district. Ordinance 24-002 is a first reading and introduction of an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 10, Buildings and Building Regulations, by amending that chapter to add a new Article 6, Point of Sale Inspections. Moving on to resolutions. Resolution R 24-020 is from Human Resources. Local 1511 International Association of Firefighters Union Contract Settlement. May I get a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Support.
Are there any public comments in regards to this resolution? Are there any commissioner comments?
The only comment I have is, as we move forward with settlements of union contracts, my experience with the school district is that the school board helped share parameters to the negotiating team so that there was an opportunity for board or commission input through this process. I'd like to see that in the future, if at all possible.
I have a motion from Commissioner Gauss with a second from Commissioner Roberts. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Castleberry,
Yes.
Commissioner Gauss,
Yes.
Mayor Heath,
Yes.
Commissioner Banky.
Yes.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Resolution R 24-021 is from Fire. Authorization to apply for firefighter turnout gear grant. May I get a motion to adopt the resolution?
Move to adopt the resolution.
Support.
Are there any public comments in relation to this exact resolution? Are there any commissioner comments? I have a motion from Commissioner Roberts with a second from Commissioner Castleberry. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Castleberry,
Yes.
Commissioner Gauss,
Yes.
Mayor Heath,
Yes.
Commissioner Banky,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz.
Yes.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Resolution R 24-022 is from Community Development. Is a resolution to approve a contract with Smith Group for phases 1 and 2 of the design of the Town Square project. May I get a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Support.
Are there any public comments in regards to this resolution? Are there any commissioner comments?
Page 3 of the contract under 2.1 schematic design plans. The final sentence in that paragraph says, "We will present the schematic plan design documents to the City of Adrian staff and any stakeholders you would like to invite for discussion and input." Do we plan to have a public presentation similar to what we did with our last two projects with the bike lane related to this?
I think at some point in the process, we'll have an open house. I don't know if it'll be in phase 1 and 2. There's further design steps beyond that, but at an appropriate point in the process, we'll have an open house.
Thank you.
We have a motion from Commissioner Castleberry with a second from Commissioner Miller. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Castleberry,
Yes.
Commissioner Gauss,
Yes.
Mayor Heath,
Yes.
Commissioner Banky,
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Commissioners, there are miscellaneous reports in your packet. Are there any questions or comments on those?
I have a question for our administrator. In the future, could we, in the Adrian Fire Department report, could we include a line item there on fire inspections?
Yeah, I'll ask Chief to incorporate that.
Thank you.
At this time, we will now begin public comment. This is general public comment. It doesn't have to be anything that was just voted on or discussed. It can be on anything, but just to reiterate, there's a 3-minute time limit. And for the record, we need you to state your full name and your municipality. We will start inside the chambers first. And when we have exhausted all public comment, we will then open it up to Zoom participants.
Robert Duke, City of Adrian, here again. Got a couple questions, couple concerns. You just tore down a building on Main Street, 117 through 120. I don't know how the city can, in good conscience, let them drop all that debris in the hole. The fixtures went in that were in that building, the roofing material, the lath and plaster lead-based paint walls were put in that hole. I assume probably the asbestos plumbing that was still in that building and all that. If I had something go on my property and tore it down, I couldn't bury it in my backyard. You guys would have somebody over there finding me and doing that. I called the state about it. They told me I got to file a complaint with the city. So I guess I'm filing a complaint with the city about your practice of doing that. It makes no sense. Most places, if you had a house burned down and got rid of it, you'd have to dig the foundation up to 2 feet all the way around and underneath it to rebuild. That's state building code. You're not following any of that. So I don't know how our city can do that in good conscience with our tax dollars. Because now you've just made that basically I don't know, it's like a hazmat site. You can't do nothing on it. I know you got some plan to put sheds or some deal like that on it at some point in time, some kind of business plan, but you'll never build a structure there. You couldn't put a parking lot there. It's not stable. So I question that. Hope the citizens are aware of what you're doing with their money. The other thing is a law enforcement issue. For probably the last 8 to 9 years, I've been complaining about a drug dealer down the street from my house. He's been raided. It's been going on. He had vagrants living in his shed, which burnt 2 or 3 months ago. I've called Rhino till I'm blue in the face. I figure he's giving people up because he's still dealing drugs. The local street cops that I've spoken to, not real recent, tell me, oh, they can't do nothing because it's a Rhino issue. They won't do nothing about it. These are quality of life issues that it's allowed to be going on inside of our city. I don't give a shit what Rhino does or doesn't do or what they need to flip. I want the drug dealing to stop in my neighborhood. So I'd like that to happen, Vince, at some point. Thank you.
I can bring you a microphone.
Keith Miller, Adrian resident. Corner of Chestnut and Croswell, there's a condemned house that's been condemned for 2 years. There's animals running in and out of it. I don't understand why it has not been tore down. The building inspector's been there. I know he's friends with the owner of the property. He keeps trying to buy or find somebody to buy that property. And quite frankly, it's not worth saving. It needs to be torn down. I don't understand why it's not been torn down. Just down the street, if you remember 3 years ago when they had the guy that barricaded himself, that house is still there and it's still boarded up. Nobody's done anything with that. If you want to get rid of blight, you need to get rid of that stuff. Thank you.
Carrie Smith, City of Adrian. Sorry, I ran out of time earlier. This is regarding the point of sale ordinance. A couple additional questions. So can a deed be recorded if a conditional certificate of compliance is issued? Typically, the deed is recorded before the mortgage, and no lender is going to wait 3 months until a roof can get put on a house. When there's a land contract, when will the inspection take place? So at the beginning of the process, the buyer and seller might not even exchange funds. It might be a zero down land contract. The buyer's paying the property taxes. The seller is still technically the fee simple owner of the property. So at the end, when the land contract's fulfilled, let's say the buyers live there for 10 years, the seller has to pay for blight on a property that they have not been living in order to fulfill a land contract. And then if I'm that buyer and I've fulfilled my land contract and paid it off in full, I don't get the deed until the seller makes repairs. That does not make sense. And if it is about life and limb and safety, then that inspection, we've let that buyer live in that property that whole time without bringing it up to code. The last was a scenario that we see, just about every week. Let's say that you're tasked with selling and settling your parents' estate and selling their home. And as you work on planning a funeral, making final arrangements and clearing out their house, which is already an exhausting process, you list the home for sale, and the city decides that the house needs the porch replaced, as well as the fence, the driveway, and a portion of the roof. And conservatively, you're looking at $20,000 in repairs. You don't have the money to complete the repairs, and the only asset the estate held was the home itself. So what are your options? You can't afford to sell the house, so you let it sit vacant. Property taxes are still due on that property, and if you can't afford those property taxes, in addition to the taxes you are already paying on your own home, you can potentially lose the only asset your parents left you in a tax sale. So what have we gained? The house sat vacant and did not get fixed, violating the blight code every single day. Buyers who could have come in and negotiated for repairs under the current standard buyer protections that are in place, such as home inspections, appraisals, and the advice of their trusted real estate professionals, they've moved on and they've bought other properties. So I agree with what many people have said. The blight is the issue. This just is not a way to do it. And you're going to get a lot of kids sitting at the table refusing to eat their dinner.
At this time, we will open up public comment to the Zoom participants. Hearing no public comment, commissioners, are there any comments you would like to make?
I would like to congratulate Jay on the Michigan grant that we received. I've written Michigan grants myself and they're very difficult. And I want to congratulate him on that success and hopefully that is a strong proponent for us to help fight blight. And then I want to also thank Brett for coming in on his day off and picking up the stuff to take back and the county held with Fokker. I thought it was pretty awesome that Brett went in and on his day off, even with some citizens speaking ill of him, that was him on his day off, coming in and taking care of city business. So I just wanted to thank him for doing that. Our city employees are pretty great and they don't hear that enough. So I wanted to make sure that they got a shout out today.
Just again, thanks for the public comment when it comes to participation and sharing your voice and your opinion. It's greatly needed, wanted, and appreciated. This last weekend, I had the opportunity to attend the Elected Officials Academy with the Michigan Municipal League. I've emailed the commission, so just look at the link and all the presentations that they had there for the weekend are available for you guys to view as well. And then there is a blood drive coming up at the Adrian Armory, June 10th. If we could maybe have these posted in a place in City Hall, that'd be great. And then lastly, welcome back, Michelle. You have been missed and your organization skills are welcome as you return.
Yesterday morning, I had the opportunity to once again be a committee member for the Greg Adams Erase the Stigma 5K race in downtown Adrian. And I'd like to thank all the sponsors and volunteers that came out and all the nearly 450 participants. It's a very worthy cause for to raise funds for mental health and specifically because of who Greg Adams was, that exercise and being outside is such a key component of keeping good, healthy minds, not just inside, having psychiatrists and things like that, but being outside and being healthy outside is so important. So everybody get outside and enjoy the sunshine.
May I get a motion to adjourn?
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.